What happens when big names in business come to a small town? Well, that's what we wanted to know about Windsor, Connecticut. In the past decade, national players Walgreens, Dollar Tree, and Amazon have located either distribution or fulfillment centers there. I spoke with Jim Burke, Windsor's Director of Economic Development, and Town Manager Peter Souza about several factors that led to this development and some of the challenges that are associated with it.
Well, Windsor certainly has been a community that's continued to evolve over the decades, starting as a tobacco farming community. And in the last 7 or 8 years, we certainly have seen 3 very large logistics or distribution centers land in our community. And so we continue to see growth in employment. We probably have roughly between the Walgreens facility, Dollar Tree, and Amazon most recently, we probably have a little over 3,000 employees altogether just with those facilities.
That's quite a few jobs for a community that has fewer than 30,000 people in the last 8 or 10 years. What's that impact been, 3,000 new jobs?
Well, it has an impact on our traffic. You know, we have an interesting thing about Windsor is our workforce is, the resident workforce is only about 15,000, but there are more than 26,000 jobs in Windsor today. So we have a lot of commuters, people coming into town. We also have people who from Windsor commute out of town. So we're really part of a region. So one of the impacts is that other communities have jobs in Windsor, other towns, which is perfectly fine for us because our residents work in the other towns. So
it sounds like a strong symbiotic relationship there.
Yeah.
When you heard that Amazon most recently was interested in coming to Windsor, what did you think?
We were excited, certainly having a company of that caliber, and want to make sure that folks understand that it's quite a range of jobs that are in these facilities. Not only do we have the associates that are working on the floor with the packaging handling, but there's IT jobs, there's jobs in administration and management, and so it's quite a range of jobs, and that's what excited us about that opportunity, was that gave opportunity for folks within the region to be able to get a whole range of positions.
Because I've heard one of the things that the union especially has been critical of is the fact that they feel like Amazon or some of these other fulfillment and distribution centers are actually lowering the wages that's available to people. So is what I'm hearing from you, that's not the case? That's not been your experience?
It's not been an experience. Also, as I say, the diversity of those jobs are significant, and they do bring benefits with them for the full-time associates that work there. So the wages may be at the lower end of the wage scale, but they do bring a whole host of benefits, including health insurance and educational reimbursement.
And there's a range of jobs, as Peter alluded to. Amazon, for example, is very automated. So there's a lot of technicians who are needed to keep the robots operating and provide the support. It's not all pick and pack. It's quite a range.
When you look at tax incentives, that seems to be part of the reason that they came to Windsor, in addition to some other things. Geography is working in your favor, right? But when you look specifically at the tax incentives, I could hear people say, well, you're offering these incentives to quite large businesses. That's could be seen as a competitive disadvantage for some of the mom and pops in town. What would you say?
The topic of incentives is definitely a complex and often tricky topic to discuss and navigate your way through. In Windsor, we've had a pretty clear policy in terms of our financial incentives. Town Council has established that policy roughly about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer now. And so we offer, part of that policy is to offer incentives also for our homegrown companies to expand. And so they don't need to be investing at the scale that Amazon did. And so we've set that policy up so that our homegrown community-based companies can also receive some financial incentive to expand and grow within the community.
Jim, you talked about the impact on traffic. I imagine there's a lot more people coming through the town. Are there other challenges that you've seen that you're trying to sort of work around now that you have these businesses in town?
Traffic is about the most significant thing. We've worked with regional transit to expand transit. So they actually they're one of the biggest transit users. So that helps the other businesses in our area because it focuses the attention of the public transit on our area. So because they've expanded the number of routes that and the hours. So they now provide bus service on Saturday and Sunday to a greater extent. So that has been a positive impact. The other thing is that suppliers to a company like Amazon are basically local based. So we hear from the hardware store that their guys are always coming over to buy nuts and bolts, or the landscaping company that plows the parking lot is a local company.
What about expansion of maybe smaller businesses? I can imagine that restaurants, you need more restaurants to feed the people who are working at these places. Have you seen a growth in smaller businesses as a result of that, or is that something that's still developing?
There's been some incremental growth, but a lot of these facilities are self-contained, and so the spillover may not be as great as one would expect. It really depends upon the type of business. An office type of use may give some more flexibility for their employees, but a precision manufacturer or a fulfillment center may have a little more rigid hours, and so folks can't necessarily. But there is some spillover, and so we have seen some incremental increases.
Have you heard from other communities, you're right over the Massachusetts border, maybe even in Connecticut, who've picked up the phone and said, what is it in the water there? You have, some very large businesses, Walgreens, Amazon, and Dollar Tree, all with some type of center in your very small community. What are you doing that's different? Have you heard from them?
We do. We are certainly very happy to share some of our experiences, and because we often benchmark with other communities on other type of activities. So we have the advantage of location and access to some really great transportation facilities, be it the interstate highway system, Bradley International Airport. We have rail, which will be enhanced with the Hartford line running from Springfield to New Haven in a month or two. And so all those are to our advantage, as well as the fact that we have large parcels of land which are relatively flat, the old tobacco farms, and owned by under the same ownership.
With that basic resource, we've added to it a community that focuses on trying to be business friendly. So our commissions, our staff are all aligned. So, for example, the Planning and Zoning Commission meets a week after the Wetlands Commission meets, so that an applicant for a site plan can get through in a month.
It's really streamlining that business process, which you're constantly hearing from people who are trying to get before these boards, that it just takes too long, and that's either cost prohibitive or they lose the opportunity. Exactly. Yeah. Very quickly, in the time that we have left, you're a small town. How do you balance, sort of these corporate giants and small town charm? Is it something you're thinking about?
It certainly has been in the forefront of our community's mind for decades. We were fortunate back in the 1950s and 60s to have leaders in the community that had the foresight to establish segregated corporate areas or industrial areas from our residential areas. So it's been easier for us than some other communities because the way our community has been planned out. But we certainly try to get these companies involved in our local Chamber of Commerce, in our wide range of community traditions that we have upcoming. In a few weeks is our annual Shad Derby, which is a whole day, actually a whole month-long series of events. It's a great tradition over 50 years, and so a lot of these businesses get involved in those community activities. So we try to keep those. We have a beautiful town center. We welcome everyone to come visit us in different events. So we try to make those connections for the employees of the businesses as well as the corporate.
Terrific. Peter Souza, Jim Burke, thanks for coming in.